Before the gods, before the stars, before time itself had a name, there was only the void, a chasm of absolute, suffocating silence. Imagine a darkness so profound it could physically crush you. But from this empty, frozen abyss, a monster was born, a titan woven from venom and frost, whose very sweat birthed a race of nightmares. You think you know how our universe was made? Think again. The earth you walk on, the sky above you, the oceans you sail, they are not the product of divine love. They are the butchered, rotting remains of a primordial giant. Welcome back to Legends from the Dark Myth. Today, we witness the gruesome genesis of the Norse cosmos. Today, we meet Ymir. To understand Ymir, you must first understand the emptiness he came from. The ancient Norse called it Ginnungagap, the Yawning Void. It was a place of nothingness, but it was bordered by two absolute extremes. To the north lay Niflheim, a realm of eternal, crushing ice, biting winds, and rivers of freezing, venomous mist. To the south lay Muspelheim, an inferno of raging fire, unbearable heat, and blinding sparks. For eons, these two realms reached out into the void. The poisonous rivers of Niflheim froze into massive blocks of rime ice, stacking higher and higher into the emptiness. Meanwhile, the hot, dry winds of Muspelheim blew across the chasm, melting the edges of that ancient ice. Where the freezing venom met the scorching fire, the ice began to sweat. The drops quickened. They gathered, and from that venomous, melting slush, a spark of life was violently ignited. The ice formed a shape, vast, incomprehensible. It was a giant of impossible proportions, a being of pure, raw chaos. This was Ymir, the first entity to open its eyes in the dark. He was not a god. He was an incredibly powerful, hungry force of nature, a Jotun. But in a void of nothingness, how does a newborn titan survive? As the ice continued to melt, another creature took form beside him, a colossal, hornless cow named Odin. From her teats flowed 4 massive rivers of milk, rushing like white waterfalls. Ymir knelt in the dark, drinking greedily from these rivers, sustaining his massive form. The universe was still empty, but it was no longer quiet. It echoed with the sound of a monstrous giant feeding in the dark. Ymir was entirely alone, but he would not be for long. He was a creature born of venom, and his biology was as chaotic as the forces that created him. He did not need a mate to reproduce. As Ymir drank the rich milk of the cosmic cow, he grew heavy and fell into a deep, feverish sleep. In his slumber, the heat of his massive body caused him to sweat. From the moisture of his left armpit, a horrific transformation occurred. The flesh bubbled and twisted, and from it, a male and a female giant violently tore themselves free, tumbling out onto the frozen ground. As he shifted in his sleep, his massive legs rubbed together, and from that friction, a terrifying, 6-headed giant was born. These were the first of the frost giants, the Jotnar. They were chaotic, brutal, and utterly wild, inheriting the venomous nature of their father. Ymir was the progenitor of nightmares, the root of a dark family tree that would plague the cosmos until the end of time. For a time, this dark, terrible family ruled the void. Ymir continued to sleep, eat, and spawn, while the frost giants roamed the frozen wastes. It was a bleak, brutal existence. But the universe demands balance, and while Ymir was birthing chaos, the cosmic cow, Odin, was slowly unearthing order. Odin had no grass to eat in the void, so she nourished herself by licking the salty rime ice. On the first day of licking, her rough tongue uncovered the hair of a man. On the second day, a head emerged. By the third day, a complete being stepped free from the ice. His name was Buri. He was tall, beautiful, and powerful, the complete antithesis of Ymir's grotesque, venomous nature. Buri eventually had a son named Bor, and Bor took a giantess named Bestla as his wife. Together, they had 3 sons. You may recognize their names: Vili, Ve, and the eldest, Odin. These 3 brothers were the first of the Aesir gods. As they grew, they looked upon the void. They looked upon Ymir, and they felt nothing but disgust. Ymir was a creature of mindless consumption, endlessly breeding chaos. The young gods realized that as long as Ymir lived, the universe would never be more than a dark, frozen wasteland filled with monsters. To create, they first had to destroy. Odin, Vili, and Ve armed themselves and ambushed the primeval titan. The battle was cataclysmic. The sheer scale of the violence shook the foundations of Ginnungagap. The 3 gods struck Ymir down, tearing into his colossal flesh. When Ymir finally fell, the wound was so massive, the torrent of blood that erupted from his veins was like a tidal wave. It was a literal ocean of gore. The blood rushed across the void with such terrifying force that it drowned almost the entire race of frost giants. Only 2 managed to escape on a wooden box, fleeing into the mist to rebuild their vengeful race. Ymir was dead, but his story was far from over. The gods now stood over a corpse the size of a continent. Where you or I might see a tragic end, Odin saw raw materials. The brothers dragged Ymir's gargantuan body into the very center of the Yawning Void, and there they began the most macabre act of creation in human mythology. They didn't just build the world, they butchered it into existence. They took Ymir's flesh and molded it into the soil, the dirt, the very earth that we call Midgard. They took his unbreakable bones and shattered them, piling them up to create the jagged mountain ranges. His teeth and the shards of his broken jaws were scattered to become boulders and stones. That ocean of blood that had drowned his children, the gods pooled it around the earth, creating the deep, dark seas that encircle our world. They plucked the thick hair from his corpse and planted it deep into the soil, watching it grow into lush forests and sweeping grasslands. But what of the sky? The gods took hold of Ymir's massive, hollowed-out skull. They lifted it high above the new earth, using it as a dome to trap the heavens. To hold it in place, they assigned 4 dwarves, north, south, east, and west, to stand at the corners of the world, forever holding up the skull of the dead giant. And finally, to decorate this grim sky, they scooped out Ymir's rotting brains, tossing them upward, where they drifted and gathered to become the dark, brooding clouds that bring the rain. When we look at nature, we are taught to see beauty. We see serene oceans, majestic mountains, and drifting clouds. But the ancient Norse looked at the same world and saw the remnants of a cosmic murder. They saw a world born of necessity, built upon the bones of the abyss. So, the next time you feel the wind on your face or watch the storm clouds gather, remember whose mind you are looking at. Thank you for wandering into the dark with us today. If you survived this journey, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling us which dark legend we should uncover next. Until then, keep your eyes on the shadows.